Welcome to part 4 of A Beginner's Guide to Python. Okay, so the next part of the tutorial is about strings and string manipulation. Thus far we have done basic stuff with strings, but in this tutorial we'll go a little bit further. So we're going to create a new file and we're going to call it string manipulation. So we know already, if you followed along, that we can create a string called and we can print out the contents of that string, and that will work perfectly well. So you can access a string in a similar way you would to an array. For instance, say I wanted to take the third letter of the string, I could say print my string 3, and that should print out an L. And it does. And remember, lists are done from character 0, so 0, 1, 2, 3. So 4 would actually be the O. As shown there. If I want the last letter in this string, then I can do -1, and you see I get the D, and you can slice strings up. So imagine this was actually a file name. I could take the first 8 characters of my file name if I wanted to. I could say what do you think is going to happen here? That has to be a colon. So what do you think is going to happen here? You can see you only get file name because we're starting at character 1. So if I wanted character 0, I start file name like that, and this time I get file name. What I could do is, we know that a extension for file name is always after the dot, so we could just do -4. And then you get the .csv. So that's a good way of getting the extensions from a file name. It doesn't matter how long that file name is, it's always going to get the last 4 characters. And if you just want the last 3, so you don't want the dot, and then you can see that this file should be a CSV file, assuming somebody hasn't just renamed a different file type to a CSV. You've seen that we can get the length of a string previously in a previous tutorial. And we can actually concatenate 2 strings. And so this will print all strings, which is a concatenation of my string 2, and a space character. Now we can make everything uppercase if we want to, so we could say dot upper, and we're going to do dot upper for this one. And now all strings will be in uppercase, like this. Or we could have just done it on this one line here. and it does the same thing. And similarly, you can do .to lower. So I make that CSV, for instance. You can see that it's all lowercase. So where does this come in handy? Well, imagine you had this scenario. Okay, so that's continuously going to ask the user to enter two numbers and add them together. But we could give the instructions. So let's validate the numbers first, like this. So there's no real validation here. What we're going to do is so if they enter anything other than stop, it's not going to work. So let's try this out. Colon in the wrong place. So enter a number, 5, enter another number, 6, 11, enter two numbers, 44, 33. Let's type stop, and it still asks for another number. Why? Because my stop wasn't in capital letters. So what we could do is that, and now it doesn't matter if they enter it in lower or uppercase, it will work. So 5, 6, 11, and then we'll type stop, and it will end. Now the problem we've got is it doesn't stop straight away, so what we could do here is this, and now what you can see is if A equals stop, it's going to break. If B equals stop, it's going to break. .34, 34, and we type stop, and it ends. Similarly, if we run it again, we could add one there, but we could put stop into the B number and it's still going to stop. So that's a useful reason to use things like upper and lower. What about finding words within a string, or finding patterns in a string? So let's create a string called iString. We'll just have it apples, pears, bananas. and say we wanted to find the word pairs, what we can do is look for the index where pairs is, so you can see where in the string pairs exists. So and that's 8. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We can replace a word in a string, so we could do my string dot replace, and we could do pairs, and we can replace it with grapes. Except when you do replace, it does it on the fly, so this hasn't actually replaced my string, it's replaced it into the result. So what we need to do is that. Now you can see it does it. Or we could do this. And now my string has the word pairs replaced with grapes. So we can turn our string into a list, and what we can do is, you can see here it's not very useful, apples, pears, bananas. So if I wanted to loop through all the fruits, then it's not easy to do it. I can't do a for fruit in fruits because it's all in one string. So what we can do is we can say my list equals my string dot split, and then what you're splitting by, in this case the comma. Now what we want to do is take away spaces, and then we can do for fruit in my list print fruit, like that. And you see it prints apples, pears, bananas without the commas. Now, if your string does have spaces in it like that, you could change your separator to be that, and it will work the same way. Now imagine you have a string and it looks something like this. You can print my string out, and you can see it's spaced along. If you want to get rid of the leading text, you can do strip. And you can see it's stripped these spaces off the front and end of the string. Now earlier I showed you that if we had that you could find the index of, for instance, pairs. But if you want to see if a string just exists, you can do this. If pairs is in my string, print we have pairs. And that will tell you if a string exists inside another string. And that is it for the string portion and string manipulation of this tutorial. Let's talk about file handling within Python. Now, file handling is important because it allows you to save data to a file and read data from a file. So we're going to open a new file here and we're going to save it as file manipulation, like this. And there's three things you can do to a file. You can read a file, you can write to a file, and you can append to a file. So the first thing we're going to do is actually write to a file. And you use the write method to write to a file. So the way we do it is we do file equals open. And we're going to call our file output.txt. And you need to tell it that you want to write. So in this case, the W means write, like that. I'm going to write some text to the file. So file.write. And if you want to put a return character so that you can add more lines underneath, you can put \n and that'll put a new line character. So we can do another one. And this time we won't put the return character because we're going to make it the last line. So if I run this now, you won't get any output, but I have actually written to a file. And how can we prove that? Well, I'm going to comment out these lines. And now we're going to do file equals open output.txt. We're going to do R for read. And we can read the whole content if we want to. Like this. By the way, it is important that when you finish with the file, you do file.close like this. So we'll have all this at once. File.read, and then we can print. We do file.close like this, and we can print content. Let's see if this works. In theory, you should get this is some text. Here is some more text, and you do. If you want to, you can read it. If you want to, you can read a file line by line. And so, imagine we didn't want this return character anymore. What we can do is file open output.txt and R, and while we can do for line in file like that. So it's another way of using a for loop, and we can do print content.strip, and what we're going to strip out is the line character like that. So now all of the text should be on the same line, and then we do file.close at the end. Open the file equals open output.txt, so it's the same as that one there. And the thing I've actually done wrong is that should be line, because we just want to that, and then you can see we've still got the same output. Doesn't matter if you do it once or if you do it line by line. But if we really want to make it all on one line, and we should do plus equals on that so that we get both lines, because otherwise one's overwriting the other. And you see everything's on one line. If we want to, we can append to the file. So and we do file.write, like that. And now if we take this line here, copy and paste it down and run it, in some text, well, you can see here I've got here's some text, here's some more text, and we're going to put in a return character there, and then we're going to append this one to the end, and then we're going to read the file in. Of course we need to print the content. And there you go, this is some text, here is some more text, and here is another line. So that's how you read and write files. But there's one more thing you need to do. Earlier I said you should always make sure you close a file. So there's a preferred method for actually dealing with files, and that is using the with command. So what we do instead, we type with open output.txt, and then we can just do that and that, and then we don't need the close, and we can do the same on the append. And we can do the same on the read. And all of these have the same, all of these will open the file and either write, append or read, and it will close the file automatically. So this will work as same as the last one did. And there you can see that's working. And that is the end of our Python tutorial. Now this is just enough stuff to get you going, and so you've learned key concepts such as variables, conditions, loops, arrays, file handling and string manipulation. There's a lot more to learn, but this is your basics. You've now got a grounding in the beginning of programming, and you should take this on and to learn more about Python in a more intermediate lesson. And that is the end of the guide. Thank you for watching.